Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. It's July 25th, 2021, already over halfway through 2021. And it's been a really interesting year astrologically so far. It hasn't been quite as interesting as 2020, which was really um, kind of a nightmarish year, to be honest, but a lot of change, and the numerological sequence of this year is adds up to a 5, so 2 plus 2 plus 1 is 5. So that's a Mercury year. That usually indicates rapid change or changes of decisions about things. So getting back to more um, practical matters, this is also a year in which slow progress is sort of the rule of thumb. It's really, in order to make a lasting change in life, you have to do things somewhat slowly, and there's only one reason for that. Basically, if a fast change, especially if it's pushed on you really quickly, the overwhelming temptation will be to fall back into old habits when stress occurs. That's been sort of an axiom that I've heard various philosophers take. Also, it's been something I've experienced personally, so you can make this phenomenal change in life. And I can speak from personal experience in that I've done it myself several times. And that as soon as things get rough, you start to revert to bad habits or old habits. So gradual change is best. Sudden change, unfortunately, is forced upon you in certain circumstances. So we're going to talk about changes in the horoscope or in the chart. We're in the sun is in Cancer in the Vedic chart right now. So we're going to talk about transits just temporarily. And by the way, in case you ever want a reading, in case you want to contact me, in case you want to get in touch with me for any reason, the easiest way to get me is through 508-525-0001. That's my direct phone line. It's my cell phone number, and I'm very easy to reach. The other thing I want to stress as well is this full moon has been kind of a humdinger. We just came out of a full moon. By the way, the topic of the show is my name is Gary Gomes. This is Vedic Astrology. I emphasize in this show or in this presentation predictions usually for the world and predictions for individual charts. And I am going to increase the frequency of these particular types of broadcasts or shows. And this is offered on Greater New Bedford Cable TV once a week. I also do shows with Lolita Donatella, which are not on cable TV. Lolita is a really talented astrologer, originally from Italy. And she's a wonderful person, very, very knowledgeable astrologer. And I love exchanging information and viewpoints with her. I'm also going to be doing another show with a friend, my friend Simone, who's been a student. I've done readings for her. She's been a student and a friend for many years. And we're going to talk about meditation and astrology. And she's also an expert on Ayurveda and a variety of other topics, tarot. And so I'll be delighted to have her on as a guest. We're setting up the show very soon. If you would like to do a show with me, or if you would like to have me as a guest on your show, please notify me. Again, 508-525-0001 is a good way to get me. NEIVAS at Comcast is a good way to get me. I am increasing the people I have on broadcast. I'm trying to expand to get more people and more viewpoints involved because I realize it can be, although I appreciate your support. I also want to provide you with other perspectives on astrology and on life in general. I'd like to get Priti Upala on the show as well. She's an investment banker and she does a lot of political perspectives. So I, I reached out to um, a group of different people, people I've met through the years who are really knowledgeable in a variety of subjects that I'm not knowledgeable about. And also, I like to discuss things with fellow astrologers because even though you think you may have things entirely scoped out, it's a good idea to check in with other people who have studied the same thing you have and get their perspective. Because we all have different opinions. The classical texts are marvelous, but they're told um, in a very, they're marvelous, but they're told in a very succinct manner. And it usually helps to get a teacher to help you interpret what the classical texts mean. And by inviting other experts in, we get sort of like special teachers, people who can add to the dialogue or add to our knowledge. So I've been doing a lot of things solo for the past. It's sort of like my inclination as a person to do a lot of things solo and to reach my own conclusions about things, but I'm always open to synthesize and interpret and use other interpretations other than my own to round out my knowledge. So the idea is you start with a certain set of knowledge, you listen to a contrary viewpoint, or you listen to an additional viewpoint, somebody who can give you additional information about what you already think you know, and you synthesize and you test that information out. And what works, you retain in your toolbox, and what doesn't work, you say, well, that may work for that person, but it doesn't work for me. And nobody gets hurt, nobody gets offended, nobody gets um, upset. The worst that can happen is you spend some time with a person that you enjoy spending time with. The best that can happen is you increase the general knowledge base of Jyotish, and one incremental step at a time. And this can also lead to increased knowledge about the entire astrological spectrum. So there's so many schools of Indian astrology. I'm just showing you like one basic school here, but there are so many schools. I'm teaching a class at Kepler right now on a system called Jaimini astrology. I'll be teaching on Varshapal come August. And I hope to teach on other subjects as well. I've been studying Brigu astrology, which is a very unique system of astrology for the past couple of years. And that may not sound like a long time, but I'm a fairly fast learner. And at certain times, I get attracted to certain subject matter, and that seems to be the time at which I tend to learn it. So certain things that I didn't understand years ago, I find it easier to understand now. And that's the way different people learn. But basically, the thing we're going to look at right now, at least from this chart, is aspects called drishtis. Drishtis are essentially glances or looks. And we're also going to talk about a little bit about the movement of Jupiter into Capricorn, which will happen around September 13th, 14th, around that time. And also we're going to talk about the lunar transits. Lunar transits are really important in astrology. And they form the basis for a lot of prediction in Indian astrology. So every planet's important, but the moon is essentially, and I was having this discussion of it the other day with somebody, the moon is essentially our mind. It's where we focus our thoughts. And the mind as an instrument or as a tool in, unlike in Western astrology, which is more connected to emotional core and caring about people. in Indian astrology is connected to the mind. It's connected to actually to mother, which is which is where the caring portion comes from, but also how our mind views and perceives the world. So it's more on a day-to-day practical basis, but also it guides us towards our wants, our needs, our desires, what we're interested in at that particular point. And to show you how potent that combination can be, yesterday I did a lot of work, just like hard physical work. And I had a lot of focus on that. And then all of a sudden, and I ended up in a situation where I didn't eat until late in the day, which is not usual for me. And I ended up getting sick last night. I'm not throwing up sick, but just like nauseated. Well, the moon was with Saturn during this entire particular transit. The moon's with Jupiter right now, as you can see from the chart. But when the moon was with Saturn, I didn't feel, and it was a full moon, so it was extremely powerful. And the moon also rules over the stomach. So that's why I find it interesting. So yesterday was a good manifesting moon, what I call a good manifesting moon, because it was in conjunction with Saturn. That usually manifests a person's desires in a really concrete form. But it can also cut them off or destroy the significations of the sun and also the moon. So Saturn's a very there's a myth they tell about Saturn, or a story they tell about Saturn in Vedic astrology. And I heard this when I was really early practicing Vedic astrology, and that is Saturn destroys whatever it looks at, whatever it glances at. So essentially, if you have a strong Saturn in your chart, whatever planets it looks at, it tends to hurt or it tends to diminish. So this doesn't mean that you won't be able to have good effects of Saturn's aspecting a planet. As a matter of fact, people who have Saturn aspects on certain planets tend to be very memorable. They stick. Their impressions of that people have of them stick with them, because Saturn freezes things into place. It just like cements them in the real world. But at the same time, it can destroy the significations of the houses that the planet rules. So let's give an example. So Saturn in this chart is aspecting the sun, and Mercury is also aspecting Libra, which isn't going to do anything, or not that much, because there are no planets in Libra. It'll destroy some of the significations of Libra, like it will make relationships difficult. And is aspecting Pisces. So if a person has a planet in Pisces, they'll have trouble with the parts of life that Pisces rules in their chart. But if it's with the moon, it's sort of like enhancing the person's charisma, but kind of hurting their peace of mind, or kind of like solidifying. It's making them focus on what they want so strongly that it's driving a lot of other stuff out. Saturn aspecting the sun makes a person rather stubborn. It sticks them with a certain purpose in life, so it's a good combination for selfless service, but it's a difficult combination for ego, or for making the person put themselves first. So that, while that's good from a spiritual perspective, it's not so good for success in this world. And I can tell you personally, the sun matures at age 20 to 21. And I can tell you just personally, I had like a boatload of confidence before I left college. And then when I turned 21, and I just graduated from college, all my confidence seemed to, I became very, trying to think of the right word, unsure of myself. That's perhaps the way. Now, again, you could look at that and say, well, that's a normal sequence of a person coming out of college and not knowing what they want to do. which is true, but this was more than that. And I have a Sun-Saturn conjunction in my birth chart. So, and it's in the 12th house, which is a house of being hidden away. So I became very shy for a couple of years. Whereas before that, I was very extroverted. I have a very strong Jupiter. So so planets mature at different ages. So let's talk about planetary maturity for a second. So and I've discussed this before, but it bears repeating. Every planet has a date at which its significations in your chart become very strong. So Jupiter matures around the age of 16. It's when we gather all our friends. It's when we make all our study decisions. If we're in India, it's when we take up residence in the Gurukula. Oh, by the way, new glasses, so you can't see them, but just so I don't let you know. And they don't look all that different from the old glasses, but they are new. And also, it'll make a person more. So let's say if Jupiter is bad, it'll give them bad associations or bad friends, or friends will teach them to, which will lead them astray. The next planet to mature is the Sun, and this makes sense because it's connected with schooling years, right? The next planet to hit maturity is the Sun. So if the Sun is well placed, the person becomes very confident. They have a mission in life. They feel really dedicated to that mission. They're very clear focused. They're very oriented, very career oriented. Moon is the next planet to gain maturity around the age of 23 to 24. And my moon is relatively isolated, so I became sort of a hermit around that age. Now, that doesn't mean my chart is going to be identical to your chart. That's just the way it is. Around the age of 24 to 25, Venus matures. And Venus maturation actually indicates more interest in marriage, relationship life, also being surrounded by other people. So you want to actually get more acquainted with other people. And a lot of my artistic aspirations started popping through around that time. So I was listening to a lot of classical music, reading a lot of books, just trying to increase my knowledge base a lot. Around the age of 27, Mars matures, and Mars will tend to increase the person's financial status. It'll increase their interest in land. If they're having relationship problems, it will underscore those. If they've decided to stay single, they'll feel a lot of pressure to get married. And so that was around the time I bought my first house. Around the age of 34, Saturn matures. So Saturn makes the person kind of ossified in their status in society. So actually, my life, career-wise, my life became easier. Relationship-wise, I lost my parents around that time, and so that was the karma of my chart. And I also married, but it wasn't an easy marriage, as I've said before. It wasn't an easy marriage, and I got out of it relatively quickly. And I'm not blaming anybody. It was as much my fault as the other person's fault. Around the age of 41, 42, Rahu matures. So you start to say to yourself, well, these are things I want to do. I want to get all these things out of my system before I die. I want to do this or do that, or go somewhere or do some things. So that was around the time that it was around 1990 that I got into Jyotish. So it was around right between my Saturn maturity and my Rahu maturity. And I traveled a lot during my Rahu maturity and my K2 maturity. K2 maturity, I got very focused on career because it's in my 10th house, but also on not really caring what people thought about me. It was perhaps the first period of my life where I was actually felt pretty independent, pretty like I'd earned my spot in the world. So all these planets go through their various maturities. Now, for different people, it can cause accidents, cause a lot of accidents for me, to be honest. It can cause accidents. It can cause depressions. It can cause illnesses. A lot, a lot of the planetary significations will depend on where the planet is placed in your particular chart. So the negatives I'm saying and the positives I'm saying will vary from chart to chart. That's why you need an astrologer to analyze them. You can't look and say, okay, so I'm gonna become a monk. That's that's one of the significations of Ketu, but it doesn't always necessarily happen because Ketu may be placed in a very strong extrovert role. Venus may be placed in a very strong introvert role. Jupiter may be placed. So you see students who are shy in high school, or kids who are shy when they're even in their late 20s. And these will be personality traits which will show up in the chart. And you'll also have to assess this little Navamsha chart down here for the planetary maturities and what they mean in the chart, how they'll manifest. So again, this is the planetary maturity is one of the fastest ways to analyze what's happening in a chart. So I can look at a person and say, oh, you had a lot of problems in your relationship around this time. And because I'll look for an afflicted Mars or an afflicted Saturn. And 99% of the time, I'll be spot on the money. That doesn't mean I'm an extraordinary astrologer. It's just that those maturity points are so strong. They're so obvious in terms of getting the details right, such as this is how that particular problem manifested. It's a little bit less accurate. That's where you need the rest of the chart for. But if you know the planetary maturities and you can work with them, it gives you a sort of like a step up on interpreting a chart. But also, like I said, you have to look and talk with an astrologer to get a good idea on how those are going to manifest. And it's only going to give you like a snapshot of that one particular point in time, not the entire chart. So that having been said, let's look at the chart. We have now, one of the things I was hoping for was when Mars entered into Leo, we see tempers sort of cool down a little bit. And that hasn't happened. So why hasn't that happened? Well, it's not that Sun and Mars are combust. That's not really what's going on. So combustion occurs when a planet is too close to the Sun. Mercury's combust right now, but it's not really hyper close to the Sun. But Mars is in Leo. It's in the Sun sign. It's very proud. But let's look at what it's aspecting. So these are drishtis or looks. So Mars is aspecting Ketu. Okay, so Ketu significations are supposed to be like Mars. So this will make this period, this next 2 months or so, kind of like people quick to temper, quick to misunderstanding, because K2 essentially gives those kinds of like, it's a headless planet. It does have independent thought. It's just this coil of energy. Okay. It's roughly connected with the energy that drives life, but it's also pretty undirected. So what happens right now is Mars, over the past few months, up until March of 2022, Mars will be driving Ketu. If Mars is in the driver's seat and is aspecting Ketu, that will make its influence over Ketu even stronger. Mars is aspecting Jupiter and Venus is aspecting Jupiter. So this will, and right now the moon. So the moon's transits are very short, so we don't worry about those too much. But basically, when Venus aspects the moon, it makes us a little bit overly sensual. Mars, Venus is a very sexual combination, likes to make us dominate partners. And it's not just sexual, it's essentially all aspects of life. And Jupiter aspects Mars as well. So what does Jupiter do? It expands things. So it gives Mars more energy, to be honest. It doesn't give it less, it gives it more. So Jupiter's aspects aren't always good. And I have to keep underscoring that for people who look at Jupiter's and chart and say, oh, it's Jupiter, we're saved. Jupiter can make situations worse. Venus also increases. Okay, so Jupiter expands, Venus increases. That Venus affecting Mars. So these aren't, so benefics are really indicated because benefic planets like Jupiter and Venus are really benefic because they give, okay, they expand, they increase. If they're involved with a malefic planet, they tend to increase. Sometimes they'll give luck, but also they'll tend to increase some of the negative sides of that planet. Okay, so you have, so this Jupiter aspecting Mars. Mars aspecting Jupiter gives a lot more energy to things like teaching and learning. So that's why I'm so interested in reaching out to people right now. But also that Jupiter Venus opposition, a little bit overly optimistic. I've seen it a dozen times before. I'm sorry, not a dozen, hundreds of times before. And the Jupiter moon makes us want to write, makes us want to create. That's good. But it also gets us interested in healing. So I've been getting more interested in healing occupations since Jupiter entered Aquarius. And I don't know if they'll stay or they'll pass this time. We'll see what happens. But that Jupiter-Mars opposition, Mars aspecting Jupiter, Jupiter aspecting Mars, is kind of a negative combination because Mars, at least in Brihaparashara Shastra, is the most malefic planet. Most astrologers view that as being Saturn, but Parashara says Mars is most malefic. And I'm not going to argue with Parashara. And Saturn aspects the sun. So we have this, what I would call self-righteous anger coming from this Jupiter, Moon, Mars, Venus combination. So people are quick to anger. And the fact that K2 is aspected gives kind of an explosive element to it. So I still think we're in for kind of a hot tempered summer. And also it'll be less moody and less easily hurt than these past few months have been. But also the government will be frozen in place for about another 3 weeks. Sun is in Cancer, Mercury's in Cancer. So these planets won't be capable of really breaking out and doing anything positive until around mid-August. And Sun and Venus will soon be combust, but it won't be a major combustion. I mean, this isn't really, they're 18 degrees apart now. We're not going to see a combustion like we normally see when Sun and Venus are combust. That is relationships breaking up or relationships being jeopardized. There is a strong desire, though, to influence or dominate relationship partners when we have combinations like this. And also, there's one thing I've noticed in Vedic astrology: whenever you have what I would call clusters of planets, so like a lot of planets aspecting each other or in the same signs, usually big events happen. So it's less Rahu and Ketu, it's less the lunar eclipses and solar eclipses that cause big events than it is a wide variety of planets or a large number of planets hitting each other. So what can we expect? Okay. Basically, we should expect some internet attacks on government, maybe even some governmental shutdowns in various parts of the world, some attacks on educational institutions, on and perhaps on public works. Also, because of Venus, Jupiter, Moon, Mars, we're still going to see weather which is going to be more fiery, though, than watery. K2 causes water accidents. That's why we had all the floods. And you're still going to see floods coming in different parts of the world. And we'll look at where in a few seconds. Rahu's in Taurus, so still be this anxiety about money. There's a lot of worry about inflation, I've heard in discussions. And there'll be an increase in oil prices really until Mars moves into Virgo. Then things should calm down a little bit, but that's another couple of months from now. The other thing to keep in mind is, and it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to go back down to pre 2021 levels. They're going to stay pretty high for the next couple of years. Which to me is more dangerous, more of an inflationary cause than government spending. I think a lot of people, so there can be an inflationary effect from government spending, but it's a combination. A lot of the inflationary pressure right now is coming from a combination of supply chains being limited because of COVID. They also can't deliver things, so that's a Mars activity and a Saturn activity. They can't deliver things to us because of a shortage of drivers. There's a shortage of labor. Saturn is retrograde. You probably won't see that shortage of labor start to rectify itself for at least until October or November. And the same with that inflationary pressure because Jupiter's moving backward. The thing I am not worried about, but at least concerned about, is Jupiter moving backwards into Capricorn, which will happen around mid-September. And what that means essentially is that a lot of the cures for COVID will start to lose some efficacy. And the reason for that is because Jupiter will move back into Cancer. The medical profession will become less powerful. It'll start to be a little bit overwhelmed. The masses, a lot of people aren't vaccinated. And I'm not even pro or anti-vaccination in this email, but if you can stop at least half of a river from flooding, then it's a good thing. Okay, so I'm not sure that's a good analogy, but that's the best I can come up with. A kind of a spontaneous person. I like to come up with these quotes as I go along. But I think that, again, vaccinate, because the COVID D will get really very active around mid-September. That's what I'm seeing. The other thing is, if we're looking at these charts now, again, hopefully I'm wrong about that. So I'm going to back off a little bit and say hopefully I'm wrong about that, mainly because Mars is not aspected by Jupiter around that, or too far into that time, but it will be aspected by Jupiter throughout pretty much October and November. So if you haven't been vaccinated yet, I strongly encourage you to vaccinate. If it's against your religion to do so, then I take other precautions. I just think it's wise at this particular point in time, and it'll help. I know everybody's been cooped up. I know, certainly I like going out without a mask on much better than going out with a mask on. But I think, and again, the efficacy of masks is an entire issue I won't get into. But it stops spreading the disease. That's one of the benefits. So it won't necessarily protect you, but if you're infected, it'll stop the spread of the disease. So that's at a minimum what it will do. The other thing is, and again, I have to caution, so I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a medical professional, but I know if you have something covering your mouth and you're infected, you're not going to spread something to somebody else. Okay, so that's the minimum it'll do. All right, so let's go over here And again, the fact that you have variations on viruses is not a new thing. Essentially, it's evolutionary theory, so it's essentially the viruses that will survive are the ones that are the most adaptable. If if a virus can figure out a way to spread more quickly, it will. If it doesn't have to, those viruses won't survive, and the main strain will stay active, right? So let's see where we have. So let me get away from COVID. But again, governments are going to have a lot of problems over the next few months. That's almost a given. Given the major planetary periods that I've been looking at around the world, that's not a particular surprise to me either. But let's look for the good spots and the trouble spots. So again, we have a lot of planets clustered around Aquarius and Capricorn. So that gives a lot of financial pressure and a lot of medicinal pressure. And we have a lot of planets clustered around what I would call the governmental houses of the chart. So this is why the royal family in England is having so many problems right now. And it isn't necessarily just them. The governments around the world are having a great many problems right now. So let's go to the chart. Without further ado, let's go to the astro mapping. Okay, you're familiar with this. Those of you who've seen this show before are familiar with this. So let's see where the problems are. Yeah, and hopefully you can see my spectacular new glasses, which aren't that different from the old ones in this site. Okay, so Mercury. Okay, so we can expect more fires in Oregon and Washington, and maybe parts of Northern California, maybe even parts of Nevada, because we have a Mercury line. Also fires perhaps in Idaho, Montana, and even down into, it looks like Colorado, excuse me, sorry about that, Colorado, and trying to get these little guys off the screen. Oh, I don't want that to happen. Okay. Even down into California, and so we're looking about just a little bit north of LA, and the sun line is going through eastern Idaho. It looks like Wyoming, Colorado, and Arizona. So we can expect some fires there. Saturn is passing through the middle of the country over by Texas near Austin. And that's a little bit indicates some problems with illnesses or diseases in that part of the state. Some sadness. Mars and Venus are passing over basically from Michigan, Indiana, down into Alabama and Georgia. So we should see more COVID outbreaks there. Problems in Mexico with disease, and problems in, it looks like Guatemala. I used to know these places much better when I was younger. My apologies. And even Easter Island, but that's a little bit of a break. If we're talking about, let's go a little bit to Hawaii. There may be outbreaks in Hawaii. So there's a lot of caution over here. Some domestic problems, some riots in Panama and Western Colombia. Venezuela will probably be affected. And although Brazil is free of planetary lines, it looks like for a little while. And the other line that we're looking at is we're seeing a Rahu line through Iceland. So again, Iceland may be hit with more volcanic activity. just because it's ruled by Venus and Venus is afflicted by Mars. The other line we're looking at right here, which I'm trying to trace what it is. Excuse me. Looks like it's over here. It's a red line. So that's another Rahu line. Excuse me, that's not a Rahu line. That's kind of an orange line. Goes over here. So that's a Mercury line. So we have a lot of activity in the western part of the world. So the sun, so some governmental problems in Japan. So I'm going to start from some disease problems in New Zealand. Some panic in the western part of Australia over illnesses, and in Indonesia, and a little bit going up into India has Saturn line going right down the middle of it, but getting a little bit ahead of myself. But Saturn's going to get hit like right in the middle with problems with both war and disease, or internal strife and disease, not war, excuse me. Saturn is hitting Russia. Sun and Mercury are hitting Japan, so they'll have some communications issue. They may have some internet cyber attacks because of this combination. Rahu is, and internet and cyber attacks in the United States will actually occur in the West. So this Sun Mercury sector here, essentially from Idaho, Montana down to Arizona. If we're looking at, I know I'm jumping all over the map right now, for which I apologize. Sun, Mercury, cyber attacks in France, Germany, governmental problems in Germany, and up through Denmark and into Sweden and Finland. And we're looking at more water crises in Eastern Europe, maybe around Greece, and some governmental problems in that part of the world. So this entire cluster or region is going to have, I would say, governmental shakeups or the need for police action from governments. The other part I'm a little bit worried about is Finland into Russia, because they have a Rahu line passing through, so that's going to give disease issues. And we have cyber attacks in the Middle East, into Western India, and cyber attacks on government, flooding potential in central Russia down through Indochina, especially excuse me, Myanmar, not Khmer. Khmer is over here, but also some flooding possibilities in Khmer and that region of the country, in that region of the world. And the Sun Mercury combination, again, cyber attacks really aren't necessarily a guarantee here, but it looks like a lot of the world is looks kind of vulnerable to them right now. So I don't think the United States is going to be the only area hit by them. Korea may, even North Korea may experience some cyber attacks over the next few weeks. If we go back to the chart, so these will be, I would say, governmentally directed cyber attacks, not necessarily commercially directed cyber attacks. A lot of the previous cyber attacks have been commercially directed. So let me wrap up by looking at the chart for the next week. And we have, one of the reasons I'm focusing so much on cyber attacks is mainly because the chart that I'm looking at right now has a Mercury rising, or I'm sorry, Gemini rising, and Mercury in the second house, aspected by K2 if I use sign aspects. So that to me indicates some kind of breakdown in infrastructure. Again, I'm not treating these things as being particularly hazardous, but they'll be disruptive to that part of the world and maybe attacks on water systems. The other thing is, so the other thing is Rahu's in Taurus, and that'll be attempts to that usually creates attempts to extort money or financial gain. Excuse me. I hope you enjoyed that commercial for generic water. Okay, so let's look at the individual signs this week. Aries has, so again, it's not all doom and gloom. Certain good things can happen for these combinations. But like I said, whenever I see clusters like this, I get a little bit concerned because big events tend to happen. It's worse if they're clustered all in one sign. That's actually much worse. So that was what happened in December 2019 and January 10th of 2020 when COVID started to manifest over here rather dramatically. All right, so let's look at the individual signs. For Aries, Aries has a lot of emphasis on financial matters, as it always does. A lot of interest in getting more money, a little bit dissatisfaction with the amount of money it receives. A lot of focus on home life, anger at home, anger at children, although children will probably be doing pretty well. And some communications issues with spouse, which show up again this week. Saturn career life for Aries, it looks good, but it's slow moving. It's slow to produce gains. And that really won't change for another year or so. But you'll see some improvement, I think, after around mid-September when Jupiter moves into the sun, when it moves into Capricorn. For Taurus, sun rising or moon, this is May 15th to June 15th. So remember, you're going to push everything back to the 15th of the following month from when the sign usually changes. A lot of fame for this particular sign, a lot of potential growth, a lot of dissatisfaction with personal life, and a lot of problems in communications with other people. But overall, they'll have more success in building up communications. Priorities, relationship-wise, they should probably play it slowly and not get into a relationship really until about 2 months from now. Even though they may be very strongly attracted to somebody. And let's see, Kate, who's in the 7th house, so uncertainty about what kind of relationship partner they should seek, a little bit of ambiguity about that in their minds. Saturn is in the 9th house, 9th lord is in the 9th house, so this will give them a good career, a career which will give them benefit, will give them fame, recognition, make them memorable to other people. And Jupiter's in the 10th, very good for career success, although they will find themselves sliding backwards between September and December just for a few months, so until December when the career life starts to blossom strongly again. Gemini, that's rising, and that's June 15th through July 15th, excuse me. Gemini's not in such bad shape this month, although they will be spending a lot of money and they'll be getting a lot of recognition in foreign countries, but they'll still be they'll still be a little bit unhappy about the progress they're making. But they'll make much more progress this month than they have previous months, especially financially and especially in terms of influence. But it'll be slow. Saturn's aspect in the sun, so that slows things down. Mars and Venus are in the third house. Strong desire for relationship life, strong desire to get involved with people on an intimate basis. It's probably not a bad month for them to get involved. The only problem I see is that the Lord of the seventh house will make it relatively short-lived because Jupiter is going back into Capricorn. It'll kind of screw relationship life after September. But they'll have at least 1 month where things seem to be going pretty well. In terms of home life looks good. It looks pretty solid. Some should watch out for some problems to mother though. Mother's nerves may be a little bit on edge. Fifth house is children. Children look like they're doing well, although they're a bit aggressive. Health issues. Gemini should be careful about health issues this month, especially stomach problems. Seventh house Lord is Jupiter is in the ninth house, so it's good for meeting new relationship partners. But like I said, since Jupiter's moving in retrograde, they'll be kind of stuck with old relationship partners. That'll continue to about October, then they'll change their mind and start looking for new relationship partners. Saturn's in the eighth house. That's kind of a difficult transit. That's what's called an Ashtami Shani. So it does tend to uproot your personal life and make you look for new partners. Jupiter and Moon are in the ninth house and give great career success, great writing potential. So people with this combination will tend to be fairly good writers, and they'll actually publish some really good stuff over the next few months. So for Gemini, it's overall an auspicious month. Somewhat good for relationships, but just be a little bit careful about how long you expect them to last. For Cancer, Cancer has Sun and Mercury in the first house. Saturn's in the seventh house, so relationship life will remain stable, but maybe even subject to some breakup. But that probably won't happen until mid-October. And also, if it survives this particular transit, the relationship will stay together for a long, long time. So people with this sign, this moon sun sign, they'll tend to attract older spouses, responsible spouses who are having problems, or relationship partners who are having problems. And that Mars-Venus conjunction in the second house, again, good for money, good for sexual attractiveness of the sign. They'll have a lot of quarters, for lack of a better word. And the third sign down here is the third house down here is ruled by Mercury, so they'll fulfill a lot of desires this month. Fourth house is ruled by Venus. Lord of the fourth house is in the second house, so that's good for financial progress. Fifth house Lord is in the second house, good for financial gains. No planets are in the sixth house, so that's good for health. And the Lord of the sixth is in the eighth. That's what they call a Vipreet Raj Yoga. So essentially, that's good so it takes away any illnesses and sort of banishes them. Saturn is in the seventh house. We've already spoken about that in terms of relationship partners being a little bit older or a little bit wiser, maybe. And Jupiter Moon, they'll tend to be attracted to people who are in public lives or are well educated. Ninth house Lord is Jupiter, is in the eighth house, so there'll be a lot of focus on occult learning and mysticism, and Rahu will give some fame to this chart. For Leo is going to spend a lot this month, and it'll also spend on friends and on things it wants to accumulate for his house. It'll also have relatively good luck in terms of career and education. So those two traits are actually very good for Leo this month. In terms of money looks reasonably good, but again, a lot of expenditures. Saturn is in the sixth house, so I'll have to watch out for dietary issues. Jupiter's in the seventh house, so a lot of relationship opportunities, a lot more benefit from relationship partners, and a lot more potential business partners. Ninth house lord is Mars, placed in the first. That's very good for luck. Rahu's lord is Venus, placed in the first. Very good for career life and career recognition. And the 11th lord is placed in the 12th. So again, a lot of spending on friends, a lot of spending on aspirations. For Virgo, Virgo has to watch out for relationship partners who are, they seem attractive to you, but they're not really trustworthy or not really reliable, or the chance of entering into a long-term relationship is negligible. And there'll be a lot of sexual interest in the sign, but not a lot of sexual activity. The Lord of the second house and the 12th house, so again, a lot of expenditures this month. That shows up strongly for Virgo too. K2, a lot of courage in pursuing goals. So no matter what I'm telling you, Virgo will aggressively pursue its goals this month. Saturn's in the 5th house. Home life looks reasonably good, although there may be some struggles or some financial gains through home life. Saturn's in the 6th. It has to watch out for stomach issues, stomach problems. I'm sorry, Saturn's in the 5th. It'll have some problems with children, but it'll also have some stomach issues. Jupiter and Moon are in the 6th. It'll have some stomach issues as well, or digestive issues, but those will tend to be cured relatively quickly. 7th house lord is Jupiter. Sometimes fights or arguments with a wife or relationship partner. Rahu's in the 9th house, and that gives a lot of luck. And Mercury and Sun are in the 11th house, a lot of financial gains. Libra has K2 in the 2nd house, so money will tend to be a little bit of a problem. They won't get recognized or they won't get compensated appropriately, at least for a little while. Saturn is in the 4th house, so home life will be a kind of a burden to them. Although Jupiter and Moon in the 5th house is a lucky combination, it aspects the 1st house, so it'll give a lot of career opportunities to them, and they should explore those, and a lot of writing opportunities. 7th house lord is Mars. Mars is in the 11th house, so gain through relationship partner. Rahu's in the 8th, a lot of obsession with occult or metaphysical subjects. And 9th house lord is in the 10th, so career life should expand, and there should be good financial gains, especially through property. Scorpio has, taking my time, Scorpio has Saturn in the 3rd, Jupiter and Moon in the 4th, so home life should be relatively good. Rahu in the 7th, disagreements with spouse or relationship partner. Sun and Mercury are in the 9th house, so that should be good for career success. And Mars and Venus are in the 10th house, a lot of career recognition. They'll love their jobs. Sagittarius has no planets in the 1st house. The 1st house lord is in the 3rd, along with the Moon, so that'll give some career success or recognition. Saturn in the 2nd house, money will be slow. This has been a theme with Sagittarius this year. Rahu in the 6th house, again, they have to watch out for stomach issues or for minor health problems. The Lord of the 7th is in the 8th, so this will give some disagreements with relationship partners. And lack of luck with bosses, and maybe even some fighting or disagreements with bosses this month. Capricorn, Saturn's in the 1st house. It forms a Sasha Yoga, which is a very strong authoritarian position for Saturn. Jupiter and Moon are in the 2nd house, good for financial gains. Rahu is in the 5th house, some dissatisfaction with children. And Mercury is in the 7th house, so it'll give good relationship opportunities. Matter of fact, relationship opportunities will be a focus of the sign this month. But they'll have to watch out because Mars is in the 8th house, and so they'll tend to attract difficult relationship partners. K2's in the 11th house, good for financial gains, but from unexpected sources. Aquarius, Jupiter and Moon are in the 1st house, very good for authorship. Mars and Venus are in the 7th house, very good for attracting very attractive individuals. Rahu's in the 4th house, dissatisfaction with home life. Sun and Mercury in the 6th, a lot of struggles with self-esteem or judgment. And Ketu's in the 10th house, so not a lot of career recognition, but a lot of ability to reach large audiences. And Saturn's in the 12th, so more success overseas than at home. Finally, Pisces has Rahu in the 3rd house, so a lot of gains. Mercury and Sun are in the 5th house, or in the 6th house. A lot of problems with health issues. Mars and Venus are in the 7th house, or Mars and Venus are in the 6th house. So again, that'll leave more digestive related issues. Good chance for love relationship because the Lord of the 7th house is in the 5th. Ketu's in the 9th house, unexpected gains and success, and especially from foreign sources. Career will benefit greatly if it's from foreign sources. That's it for this week. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. We want to get that subscription list up. There'll be more videos coming, schools coming, more classes are coming, readings are coming. So stay with me. You've been great so far. I love you all, and namaste. Thank you very much, and may the blessings of the Lord shine upon you all. Bye-bye now.